I'm Lindsay, and welcome to the Intuitive Psychologist Podcast. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've been in the mental health field for over 15 years. During my spiritual awakening, I've realized that psychology is really missing the mark. I believe that traditional therapy combined with spirituality can actually lead to long-term healing and growth. And I've actually had the luxury of seeing this happen within my own private practice, where I've tried to incorporate the two together. My intention for this podcast is to discuss my opinions about spirituality and therapy, and I like to do it in a fun way. My hope is that I'll inspire other people to explore different ways to improve their lives. But I'd also like to normalize what many people have been going through or are currently going through, so that you can know that you're not alone and that you're not crazy. And maybe along the way I can inspire a few therapists along the way to actually think outside the box and to offer their own version of intuitive healing. If this is interesting to you, then join me on this journey as we try to have fun and explore an informal way to bridge the gap between psychology and spirituality. Hey everyone. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the next phase of my spiritual journey. I did remember that the last episode I left you on a cliffhanger, but hopefully you didn't have to wait too long to listen to this to find out what God wants from that book. And so, spoiler alert, in case you're just hopping on and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to, I think it's episode 3, the beginning of my spiritual journey, and listen to that and read the book. It's I think I looked at it, it's like $15 on Amazon if you want to get it. And it's by a really good author who also wrote The Little Soul in the Sun or something like that. Anyway, so spoiler alert, I'm about to tell you what that book says about what God wants. That blew my mind open and really began the process of me finding what was true for me. So in the book, it's very short and it's small and it's very simple, and each chapter kind of is a build up, kind of leaving you wondering, okay, well, what does God want? And then, a little bit more topic, and then what does God really want? And then it finally gets to the chapter, one of the last chapters in this short book, and the chapter is titled What God Wants or something like that. And you have to flip the page to see what God wants. And when you flip the page, it's blank. And when I flipped the page and it was blank, and I knew in that moment that God wanted nothing from me, I began to just bawl my eyes out with happiness and joy, because I was like, yes, that is so true. God does not want anything. I don't understand how a God that is all knowledgeable, all powerful, all knowing, all whatever else are the omnis that he is, why does he bring us to this earth and then all this shit goes down and he says, I need this from you, I need that from you, you have to do this to prove your worth? That didn't make sense to me. Just didn't make sense. And it just was like, if God knows everything, then he knows you're always trying your hardest. And if you fall, then you fall, but you pick yourself back up. And if you don't pick yourself up, then God would know why you didn't pick yourself back up. It's kind of like walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. Well, God has already walked a mile in everybody's shoes because God is all knowing. God is all loving. Anyway, I don't need to get into that any further. But so that blew my mind open to be like, yes, God wants nothing from me. I don't need to prove my worth to God to just be loved unconditionally. And I feel that for every single human on this earth, that nobody has to do anything and you will be loved by God. So then my friend turned me on to this next book called Journey of the Souls. And let me tell you, there were so many synchronicities. There were so many aha moments as I was listening to that book that was like, yes, this is how I felt about the afterlife or a purpose on this earth, all that stuff. And I had no reason to believe this stuff. And maybe people from my early childhood will have different memories to be like, oh no, Lindsay, so-and-so used to say that. That's where you got that idea from. But from what I remember, these were concepts that were never discussed in my culture, in my family, or on TV. So another spoiler alert. This may just be the episode of spoiler alerts that if you are interested in listening or reading these books, that you may just need to skip ahead a bit. Journey of the Souls. I have read it once and listened to it twice, but I have to warn you that my memory is shitty as fuck. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm going to do my best to summarize sort of the main points of this book. But it's this hypnotist who had all these clients come in, and all of a sudden they sort of had these similar things where they would be hypnotized to deal with an issue, and somehow they were regressed into a previous life. And in that previous life, let's say somebody got ran over by a wagon and it broke their leg, then it helped to explain why in this physical life they always had knee problems or something like that. And the guy was very confused. He wasn't purposely trying to regress people, but eventually just went with it and met different sort of levels of souls. And not to say that there is like a hierarchy of importance or like worth by this, but just to say that like different levels of souls progress with each lifetime, the lessons that are learned, that they will progress into their soul's maturity to eventually just go back into source, which is like pure love. And I believe that so much. I was like, yes, that's my jam. I always believed that we were on this earth to learn lessons, and that as we learn lessons, we matured and became closer to what would be like a saint. That's how I conceptualized that in my younger years before reading this book. And so it talked a lot about soul contracts and how people or spirits will, in the spirit land before incarnating on Earth or other planets, that the soul would get together and have general things that the soul wanted to learn, whether it was like compassion or what it was like to be mentally ill or what it was like to have your heart broken. And this can kind of be in the realm of like karma, but I don't remember specifically if it was directly like a correlation with karma. But anyway, so you agree with different souls that when you come onto this earth, that maybe you're going to be my mom so that you can teach me this. You're going to be my father so that you can teach me that. I'm going to have certain key events in my life, but everything else is free will. Everything is actually free will. You can have a contract, come to earth, throw it all away, and that's fine. But just know that if that happens, you will have to come back onto earth to learn the lesson anyway. And so this helped me to really understand and come to peace a lot with the fact that every hardship in my life, which I already believed, was there to help me grow, and that if I could find the lesson in everything, then it wasn't for nothing, right? So I had a lot of challenges growing up, especially around my father. There was a lot, and I'm sure we will get into that. But to understand that the reason that I had this particular father in this lifetime was to teach me strength, or to teach me or motivate me to want to help and heal others, that I had to feel broken and depressed and suicidal to then want to do my own work to heal myself and have the motivation to want to heal others. So in that sense, I can be grateful for him to fill that role for me. And I love that. And so this was another huge turning point for me, is to have this book that really, it was so weird, but it was like it validated so many things that I believed to my core. And again, from my memory, I cannot remember actually being taught any of these things in my environment. So it was kind of trippy too, to be like, wait, what? Like, I may have had this knowledge within me to begin with. And it kind of validated the fact that, okay, if this is true, then that just means that I'm just remembering a little piece of that spirit world sense. So that brought me a lot of peace and joy. And it was also a time of struggle. I had just moved to a new state. I only had a handful of friends. I was going to school. I was broke, beyond broke, for years upon end. But it was great. It really helped me through some hard times. So my friend also turned me on to, he said, you should go see this energy healer. And I'm like, wait, what's an energy healer? That sounds cool. Because I was like really open to like new ideas. And mind you, again, I'd been in the South for 10 years. I grew up in the Midwest. So these sort of hippy dippy trippy concepts were not something that I was accustomed to, but I just like loved that stuff. I was so excited. I was like, this is my place. So anyway, I went to go see my very first energy healer, and you lay on like a massage table, and they'll usually either touch your body or put their hands over your body. I guess it's similar to like Reiki, but I've never seen a Reiki master or Reiki healer, so I don't know how to compare the two, but this is called energy healing. Anyway, when she put her hands on me or near me, it ignited something in my entire body. And my eyes are closed. I didn't know what she was doing or what was happening. And visually, you don't get any sensory output from being in there in the room and have this happen. But what felt like to me was the palms of my hands felt like blue orbs of energy or fire or something, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is, but it was cool, and I was just like, all right, go with it. And then at the end of the session, it's like an hour, and then they, at the end, they process, okay, what was that like for you? Did anything come up? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure a lot of other cool things came up, but that was the one thing that I was like, what is this blue thing in my hands? And I guess she was on the newer end, like she was still a student, which is probably why I could go and afford to see her, but she was magnificent. She definitely was beyond a student, but she's like, well, let me go talk to my teacher and I'll come back. And I can't remember what the answer was, and it really wasn't important, but it kind of started me on this path of like a new agey, different sort of modality of finding healing. And I would go to see her as often as I could, and it was seemingly a magical experience all the time. And it was kind of like going to therapy, because like the first few minutes it's talking about your problems and what's come up for you and what you'd like to focus on, and then you've got the rest of the time on the table, where to me it felt like magic was happening. And it was really cool. I really liked it. I eventually ended up going to the school that she had come from, and took a couple of months worth of like classes to become an energy healer. And I really loved the work. I wasn't sold that I would become an energy healer, given that I'm a psychologist, or was actually in my program to become a psychologist. And, we're technically not allowed to put hands on our clients as psychologists. So I understood that while I was taking these courses, I wasn't sure how I was going to reconcile the two. But I had fun, and it was kind of like, that's my my little girl, Nova. She's a Chihuahua, so she's got a lot of opinions. But anyway, so anyway, it felt a lot like modern day, like Harry Potter kind of stuff. We would talk about the chakras and being able to visualize the different layers of the aura, and finding things inside the aura or inside the energetic body that would have to be removed, or traumas that were experienced within the body, and going through the different parts of the body and what it meant to, to visualize it with the mind's eye or to know what to do to move energy through it. And that was really cool. But I don't think that I was ready yet, to be honest. I don't think that I was ready to really go down that path yet. I think it was still a little scary, and I was still like, yeah, whatever. They can do that, but I don't have this power. I don't have this special magic within me. So I did struggle a lot to be able to understand and see and sense into what they were talking about, but it's all good. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of techniques actually that I use in my current practice as it relates to like mindfulness and relaxation and tapping into the body to have the body talk to you. So I learned so much that I use to this day in my own practice. And there were also a lot of, one section of the program you had to do characterological work. And so that was a lot like psychology. And I think that it took me into a deeper level of understanding people, their traumas, and how to work through it, and how to understand the human psyche, which was so cool. And I wish I could remember more about that program, but it was really beneficial to go through that program, and I see it coming through in my practice now. So I finished, I think, 2 of the 3 parts of that, and I remember in my final internship for my doctorate, I remember I was sort of doing both at the same time and really enjoying, exploring the spiritual side of me and tapping into tools and resources of the spiritual side of me. And I mentioned something to my supervisor, or one of the supervisors of the internship, that I wasn't sure that I wanted to get licensed, because I knew if I got licensed as a psychologist after I finished my program, that I would definitely not be able to lay hands on my clients, and that I wasn't sure that I was ready for that, and really wanted to find a unique way to incorporate psychology with what I had just learned through this energy healing course. And she pretty much just said to me, like, she didn't say these words, but she was pretty critical. Her face said a lot. Her body language said a lot. So I'm just going to speak to you as if this is what her body and her intention said, but her words were not quite this harsh. But she pretty much said to me, you're a fucking idiot to go through all this schooling and not get your license. And I was like, fuck that. I'm going to do what I want. You can't tell me what to do, because I don't really respond well to people telling me what I can and can't do. Mainly when they tell me what I can't do, because then I'm like, oh, you think I can't do this? Let me show you that I can. Anyway, so that kind of pissed me off. And I finished my program. And then I couldn't find a job. I ended up having to go back to waiting tables for, I think, 8 or 9 months while I was looking for a job. And that was a very humbling moment for me. Here I am, doctorate level, highest, education one can get. And I'm waiting tables and having people talk down to me and treat me like I'm an idiot. And I didn't tell anyone that I had just finished my doctorate, because I was like, I got to pretend like I don't have a lot of education, because no one's going to hire me as a waitress, let alone if I got hired, they're not going to let me have nice sections or move up in the industry. And I'd been waiting tables pretty much my entire adult life, especially through all my schooling. So nobody knew. And customers would talk down to me. My boss would talk down to, bosses, I had many managers. My managers would talk down to me. My coworkers would talk down to me. I would get excited about making $40 in a day of working, 4 or 5 hours, where, you're busting your ass, you're dealing with a lot of bullshit, and you have to do that with a smile. So, cut to, the entire time I was still, as I was waiting tables, still applying to every single job I could try. I was reaching out to every single lead I could to say, hey, do you know of anyone hiring or any ideas of like where to look? And so I was just floating in space. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my career. I'm done now. I'm done. I wanted to do forensic psychology, but part of me was too worried to work in a prison because I was like, well, correctional officers are like super 3D. They're not going to be into any sort of spirituality. They're not even going to be into any sort of mental health. Like, it'll just be, mental health against the officers trying to do the good thing as to providing mental health to inmates. So I was really resistant to that for a long time. But I was looking for any job possible. And so waiting tables, luckily it was one of my last main experiences that I had that was pretty awful at this place. And for any of you that are former or current waiters or waitresses, I got like quadruple sat at once. And I already had like 2 tables on top of that. So like 6 tables, pretty much back to back to back all at once. And there was this very specific guidelines. Okay, within 30 seconds, you greet the customer, no matter what's going on. 30 seconds, you got to greet the customer. Within 60 seconds, you've got to then bring them their drink. Within 90 seconds, you have to bring them bread, right? So I had reached out to one of my floor managers and said, hey, I just got quadruple sat. Can you help me? They said, sure, but then didn't end up helping me. So I went to all 4 tables, took their drink orders, whatever, came back. Since I was getting drinks for 4 tables, I'm 5'1" and can't lift a whole lot. So all I did was bring them back their drinks, and I didn't have bread to provide them at the same time. And so I took their food orders, came back, put their orders in, brought bread, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was happy. We were all laughing. Like, my tables were good. Nobody seemed to complain from my tables or be upset. Anyway, later that night, my managers pulled me into their office to tell me that I could get in trouble for not putting bread down within 90 seconds. And so I explained to them the situation like I just told you, and they're like, well, you should have asked for help. And I was like, I did. And they're like, oh, really? Who? And I told them who I asked help from, and it wasn't either of them two. And I just was like, these motherfuckers, like, there are people out there that are depressed and suicidal and like real problems going on, and you want to pull me in to complain to me that I didn't drop bread soon enough. Not that I didn't drop bread at all, but that I didn't drop it soon enough. And it was such a humbling experience to hide the fact that I had education and be talked to like this, and for 8 or 9 months couldn't find a job for the life of me, no matter how hard I tried. And it was just really demoralizing, but humbling, right? I just stayed with the humble as many times as I could remind myself, don't be demoralized, just get humble. Anyway, I got to quit that one time because I finally decided to apply to a prison, and I got accepted. And so that began my journey, but that also began, the reason I'm telling this story is because this is when I sort of went back to sleep and I stopped pursuing anything spiritual. I got super back into being 3D, and I just plugged along and did my thing and just did what I was supposed to do to sort of work on getting licensed, doing my job, driving 3 hours a day, every day for my job, trying to figure out and navigate being a stepmom, and trying to maintain some sort of life. So I had way more things to focus on than spirituality, and how that was in complete contrast for the job that I was doing. I got licensed while I was working at the prison, and I think I had told you all that I had moved up into a different position after being licensed as a suicide prevention coordinator. And I was not happy at the prison at all. I noticed on my drives home that I would get all these random synchronicities where, granted, I understand the science and the pseudoscience behind this, but I would see repetitive numbers all the time. 111 on license plates. I would look at my speedometer, it would be like 555. Looking at the time, it was 3:33. Like just stuff like that where I'm like, okay, that's weird, but that's cool. Didn't think anything of it, but just thought like, I wonder what that's about. So after that happened for so long, of seeing all these random number synchronicities, I was like, let me Google and find out what this is about. And the messages that kept coming up were like, these are your spirit guides or your angels trying to talk to you. And so then I tried to like, okay, well, what do these numbers mean? And okay, if it's 111 today that I kept seeing over and over and over again, what are my angels trying to tell me? What are my spirit guides trying to tell me? And then as the underlying scientist, I was like, okay, but yeah, you're driving the same drive at the same time every time. Of course, you're going to see repeating numbers because you're probably seeing the same cars over and over and over again. But then how do you reconcile looking at the speedometer and seeing, repetitive numbers? Well, you just happen to look down, and one of the many times you look down, it's the same number. Okay, got it, right? Then I would try to be like, okay, well, I'm going to do the scientific method, right? And if and I'm going to say out to the universe, okay, I have a question. If the answer is such and such, show me this sign. And if the answer is that, then show me this sign. And then I would wait, and then nothing would happen. And I'd be like, oh, what the fuck? So I grappled with that for a while, the in-between of starting to get called back into my spirituality as I was still doing this very incredible 3D job, which is, there just is no space for spirituality if it's not Christianity or Jesus or what have you. So that was a very interesting period of time. And I was listening to Joe Rogan a lot at that time because, again, I had a 3-hour commute every day. And so I was just podcasts all day, every day. And Joe Rogan was a big one for me because he would have people on that were like woo-woo and talked about trippy stuff and psychedelics and all these other things, which we'll talk about at another time. But that started to then open my mind back up and open my heart back up to spirituality. I think that I will end there with this chapter of my spirituality because I'm just going to be frank. Well, I'll be Lindsay, but I'm going to be Lindsay and be real. I have a lot of fear about talking about some of my experiences and some of my beliefs. I have a fear of ridicule, being told that I'm crazy, being told that because of the way that I think about things or believe things that I'm going to be harming my clients. I am afraid of losing people that are important to me or just being overall rejected. This podcast has been difficult for me to start, mainly for that, just to have my voice heard and to open up. But I know that I have to. I know that I have to be authentic, but y'all just got to be a little patient with me as I get my feet wet a little bit and poke a toe out of the closet, or, maybe open the door and then slam it shut and freak out again. But I am dedicated to trying to be out there and to be open and to be 100% authentic in everything that I talk about on here. that doesn't have to do with other people. Obviously, I'd rather describe my experience than to put other people's business out there, and I'll do my best to be respectful and honorable to other people, but it's just scary to be true and authentic and know for a fact that the more that I'm authentic, the more people will fall away. And the hope is that as some fall away, the right ones will appear. But there are a lot of people I care about that I worry are going to hear this and judge me, or that this is somehow going to negatively impact my career. So this is where the faith comes in, and the belief that no matter what, I will be okay, because I've always landed on my feet, but it's scary. So I think I'll say that for today, that is all I will say. And the next episode, I plan to get deeper into the slightly more controversial aspects of my journey. I really appreciate y'all listening and being a part of this with me. So again, just remember that no matter what, the light has always been within you and will always be within you. Take care.